scripture that I want to read right now is from Job 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know." Well, this lesson is part of a series about the God that we worship. Who is this God that we worship? Does he deserve the worship that we give to him? And as part of this series on the God that we worship, I talked about a series of encounters in the Bible, like Moses in the burning bush and Jacob wrestling with the angel by the Jabbok River, and several other literal accounts of men encountering God. And one of those is Job. The entire book of Job is surrounded. The reason it was written is because of what's in the last chapters of Job. Job was a very wealthy man. He had lots of cattle and sheep and all that. He had lots of children, and all of those things were taken away from him. Everything was wiped out. He was left with nothing. And a devastating thing to have happen. His three friends, Job, 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 what have you done to make God do this to you? Surely you have done something wrong. And Job saying, I didn't do anything wrong. And go back, and they're all conjecturing, why could this have happened? And none of them have a clue why this happened. They didn't know that in the background there was a challenge between God and Satan, and they didn't know. And so finally God has had enough of this discussion, and so he has a little chat with Job, and he starts off by saying, "Who is this that darkens counsel and by words without knowledge?" Job, you do not know what you're talking about. You're giving all these words, and your friends are saying all this advice to you. None of you know what you're talking about. He says, now prepare yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you shall answer me. So he says, I'm going to ask you some questions, and you tell me, do you know the answers to these things? First one is, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Were you around? We all know the answer to that, and Job knew the answer of too. I wasn't there. So why are you trying to tell me what's what? So he's asking a bunch of questions, and in the process of asking these questions, he mentions a lot of things that he did, that God did in creation, and just different things. We're going to read some of them. And it struck me when I was reading through that one day, I started noticing that God mentions water, and he mentions it numerous times. We're going to read them in just a moment. And so it made me think about, man, just think about all the stuff that water does, and water is, that would be a good inspiring lesson to think about something that what must have gone into just a simple thing like H2O, just simple thing like water, all the things that it might show us. Well, God mentions water in all of its states in Job 38. As you can see from the pictures, the different states that water is. We'll be talking about them in a moment. But I want to read the places where he talks about it, and we'll see. You can see 3 dots every so often where I'm skipping ahead a little bit, so I'm shortening up this chapter. But these are all the places where he talks about water. He says, or who shut up the sea with doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? Talking about the sea, that's one form of water. When I made the clouds its garments, clouds is water vapor, that's another form, and thick darkness its swaddling band. When I fixed my limit for it and set bars and doors, God determined where the oceans would be and all that. Then I said, this far you may come, but no farther. That's set limits on where water could be. And then he says, and here your proud waves must stop. Have you entered the springs of the sea? And he talks about springs being under the ocean. Well, we all know that they had not a clue that there was such a thing in those times. It wasn't even until modern times, in the last couple hundred years, that we learned anything about that. Had submersibles that could go underneath and see these fountains of water coming forth, bubbling right out of the floor of the ocean. Anyway, he says that, have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? Have you gone down and examined the depths of the ocean? Obvious answer, no, you haven't. He says, have you entered the treasury of snow? Here's another form, water in a solid form. Or have you seen the treasury of hail? Solid again. Who has divided a channel for the overflowing water, or a path for thunderbolt to cause it to rain on land? Notice all these ones in red are talking about water. On land where there is no one, in a wilderness where there's no man? Has the rain a father? Or who has begotten the drops of dew? So dew is another form of the liquid form of water. From whose womb comes the ice? There's the solid form again. And the frost, solid form again, of heaven. Who gives it birth? The waters harden like snow, and the surface of the deep is frozen. Again, the solid thing. Can you lift your voice up to the clouds? Vapor form, that an abundance of water may cover you? Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or can pour out the bottles of heaven when the dust hardens in clumps and the clouds cling together? Well, so he mentions here in chapter 38 the three states of water, one of being the vapor, as the water evaporates and goes up into the sky, it goes up in the form of vapor. Then there's the liquid form, the water itself, lakes, oceans, rivers, seas, liquid form. Then there's the solid form, the ice that is found in places in the earth. God speaks of all three of these here in Job chapter 38. And so that prompted me to talk about earth's water, because earth's water proclaims the wisdom of God. Just water itself tells us about God's wisdom. In Psalm 19, verses 1 to 4, it says, the heavens tell the glory of God, and the skies announce what his hands have made. Day after day, they tell the story. Night after night, they tell it again. They have no speech or words. They have no voice to be heard, but their message goes out throughout all the world. Their words go everywhere in the earth. So during the day, the skies speak to us, not in words, but in what you see. That's God speaking to you. The sky is speaking to you, telling about the glory of God. And at night, we look up at the sky and see the glory of God there too. It's proclaiming God's glory by all that's up in the sky that we see at nighttime. Well, today we're going to talk about what we see in the daytime. The skies announce what his hands have made. Day after day, they tell the story. So we're talking about water in its various states. First one we're going to talk about is the vapor state of water. He says in Job, we just read it, who can number the clouds by wisdom? Can you count how many clouds there are up there? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds that an abundance of water may cover you? How many times have you prayed for rain or prayed for it not to rain? And how successful were you at that? Trying to predict rain or trying to make it rain? Obviously, we can't. Somebody can, though, and that's God. Job 38:9 says, so thick they can darken the sky. That's how thick they can be. Here's an information for you. If you look up in the sky, a 1 cubic mile cloud up there It's probably about the size of your fist as you hold it up there. You get out that far, a cubic mile is not that big. A 1 cubic mile cloud weighs more than 2,200 tons. Earth's atmosphere is holding 2,200 tons up there at 10,000 feet elevation, whatever, wherever the clouds are. That is absolutely incredible. That 2,200 tons is more than 500,000 gallons. 500,000 gallons of water just in one little 1 mile by 1 mile by 1 mile cloud. Incredible. It's an Olympic-sized swimming pool. When you see that cloud up there, that's enough water to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Absolutely amazing. At any given time, Earth's clouds, all the clouds everywhere on Earth, at any given time, they hold 3,404 trillion gallons of fresh water, snow, and hailstones. We can't even wrap our head around 3,404 trillion, but we know that's an awfully big number, an amazing amount. There is more fresh water in the atmosphere up there above us. There's more fresh water in the atmosphere than in all of the rivers of the planet combined at any given moment. That much water is up there in the atmosphere. This huge amount of water is replaced every 9 days. Water goes up, that many trillion gallons goes up, and that many trillion gallons falls on the earth somewhere at different places on the earth every 9 days. New fresh water is created by evaporation and other things, and then it's to give us fresh water. It's to have water for our plants, for our cells. It's absolutely incredible what God has done. That brings me to what we call the hydrologic cycle. The water has a cycle that it goes through. And I have a picture here. The first thing I'm going to talk about or just mention is the evaporation. We'll start there because it's a circle. You could start anywhere in the circle, but just say it starts with evaporation. The waters of the rivers, the lakes, the oceans evaporates up, and the water vapor goes up into the sky. Well, in addition to that, there's a thing called transpiration. The trees around us breathe water out, water vapor. They breathe out, and that's called transpiration. So water vapor gets up there from that. There's another thing called sublimation. That's where ice turns straight from ice to vapor without going through the liquid state. That happens right as we speak. That's happening on glaciers and both sides of the Arctic, north and south. Transpiration sublimation is happening, and then the next phase of it, after it goes up, as it goes up, it gets cooler and cooler and cooler. The vapor becomes denser and denser and condensing and begins to start forming droplets, and that vapor then condenses and it comes back down in the form of rain. Well, while it's going up in the evaporation, the water vapor is going up and the clouds start forming. The next thing that happens is transportation, where the winds that go about the earth, the winds blow the clouds from over the ocean over to the land. And once you have that movement, the transportation, then you have the precipitation. Rain can fall anywhere on earth. It can fall in the oceans or on land, but it only does it once the vapor condenses. You have the precipitation coming down, and then you have the runoff from that precipitation. You have snowmelt runoff, you have surface runoff where, if anybody's ever been in Arizona during a flash flood, you know about surface water running off, but it happens here too. It's just that this part of the world is more used to that. We have more rivers to collect the water and the flow, but you have that runoff, and that happens, and it runs down, 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 finally ends up back in the ocean, but not before some things happen. When that water is running off the land, part of it is soaking in, and it's infiltrating into the groundwater, and a lot of stuff is going on below the ground. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the groundwater, just like water everywhere, starts going downhill, and it goes underground, but it goes out and goes out into the ocean in these springs that we were talking about just a moment ago. Part of what goes on from the groundwater moving is plant uptake, where the roots reach down and grab water from down below. And then I just want to talk about these things individually. First of all, evaporation. Tell you some facts about that. About 400 trillion gallons of water go into the Earth's atmosphere every single day from evaporation. 400 trillion gallons. Can't even wrap your mind around that. That's just by evaporation. Then there's transpiration that I mentioned earlier, where the plants breathe and people also breathe and give off water vapor. An acre of corn, just 1 acre of corn, will give off 4,000 gallons of water vapor per day. It was totally incredible for me to hear that. 4,000 gallons just from an acre of corn, of vapor going up in the air. People transpire as well. Part of transpiration is perspiration, but every day humans as a whole, all the humans in the world, put 1.8 billion gallons of water into the air. And that's all just by breathing and perspiring. 1.8 billions of gallons of water into the air every single day. Then we have sublimation, where the water, it's one of the unique characteristics of water. It can go straight from freezing or frozen to the vapor state, and that's called sublimation. And by that, directly from ice and snow to the atmosphere, about 8 trillion gallons of water go into the Earth's atmosphere every day from sublimation. Most of us never even heard of sublimation before, but 8 trillion gallons of water. There's obviously a lot of ice around there, just amazing amounts of ice, but it goes straight to vapor from ice. Then there's, in this vapor state that we've been talking about, it's constantly on the move. The clouds go, that's the transportation part. The winds blow, and as you can see, there's swirly things in the wind, the wind cycles, which is another thing entirely about the wind. But this doesn't happen by accident. All of these things work together, and if any one of them doesn't do its job, doesn't work together, then it wouldn't work. We'd all die. Things would go bad on the Earth. All of this circulation, all this evaporation, transpiration, perspiration, all that's to supply the Earth with fresh water. Can you imagine what happened if the water did not evaporate and circulate? It would just go stagnant and get full of junk and full of disease and everything else you can think of. But that evaporation process purifies the water, and pure, fresh water goes up into the sky. And then when it falls, it's pure water. It's like distilled water. It has no minerals in it until maybe going through the atmosphere, some of the junk that's in the atmosphere picks up some minerals as it's on its way down. But usually, once it hits the ground, it goes along the earth and starts picking up minerals and going along. And that's where we get the wonderful flavor of water, is from the minerals in the water and the beneficial parts of water, in addition to just water itself. That's the vapor state. I was going to talk about the liquid state, but I can see my time is already up. So I'm sorry, but I have to just skip. I don't like doing that, but there's too much to cover there. So I'll just mention this. Humans are mostly water. A woman is 60% water, a man is 65% water. Your blood is 94% water. Only 6% of your blood is something else. That's how important water is. And if I could have done it, I would have talked about it in the liquid state, and then at another time talked about at the solid state as well. Awesome facts. Anyway, well, if I could, for some reason, it's not advancing for me. All this that I've been talking about is an intricate and immense system. I mean, huge. We've been talking trillions of gallons of water moving in 9 days, going from the ocean up and then back to the ocean in 9 days. That cycle continues constantly. That screams designer. That stuff doesn't happen by accident. I mean, I don't have time to talk about it, but if the moon was just a little bit farther away from the Earth, the tides wouldn't work like they're supposed to. That would change evaporation cycle somewhat. If the sun was a little bit closer to the Earth, all the water on Earth would evaporate, just like it does in most of the planets we're familiar with. And everything had to be a perfect balance for us to be able to live here. That screams a designer. And we believe that that designer is God, the God that we worship. He conceived and designed and created all of this amazing stuff. Just about water. Water is pretty simple when you think about it. But even something as simple as that, just the stuff that it does, it's incredible. It shouts loud his wisdom and power. That is the skies speaking to us, not in words, but speaking to us nevertheless. But having said all that about water and about God's creation, there is a more important system that God has designed and put into plan, and that is his plan of salvation. The earth will come and go. I mean, at some point, there will be no earth left, no people left on the earth. But what will not go away is the salvation that God offers to us. This amazing God wants you to spend eternity with him. That's why he created you, is so that you would live a godly life here, respecting him, doing the things that he would like us to do, and giving him glory. That's why we're here, is to glorify God. Look what God did. He made us. He made me. David said, "What is man that you're mindful of him?" Why do you love man so much? We're just tiny little specks on a tiny little planet. God loves us, and he wants us to spend eternity with him. If you haven't learned about God and his desire for you, if you haven't chosen to have him be a part of your life and you be a part of his, give it some thought. All this stuff that we've just been talking about is mind-blowing that he did for us. I didn't even take the time to talk about all the things that he said in Job, things that Job could not have known about at the time that he lived, about the things at the bottom of the sea, the ice on the top of the oceans. Whoever went to the Arctic in those times, those are pre-scientific statements letting us know, giving us a reason to believe in the Bible, in the book of Job. And there's so much evidence. If you haven't seen the evidence, talk to somebody. Learn the things that you can learn about, because your life depends upon it. This life's going to end here, but your soul's not going to end. It's going to go someplace. You can make sure it goes where you would like it to go, by learning about God, learning how to be a part of his plan of salvation. So if you're here and you have any needs or desires, let it be known. But by all means, this week, think about all that God's done. And do I want to be a part of that? Or am I going to say, yeah, so what?